Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Community Feedback. This one focusing in on Crossplay Now, hashtag Crossplay Now. This is where we take your comments, your feedback, what you've been posting on our videos, and we like to highlight those and continue that conversation. So without further ado, let's do this thing. So Crossplay Now, there is a lot of passion. A lot of Sony fans feel like I'm attacking them. A lot of, I guess just Fortnite fans feel like Sony is attacking them. And so there's a wide range of various opinions about this. And so we've selected so many, comments. There were, just so many really awesome and, amazing comments. So I do appreciate everybody acting civilly and having a really interesting dialogue in the conversation going on between the videos. But hopefully we've got a couple of really interesting opinions to share with you guys here. And again, we'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. But without further ado, let's hit our first comment. So B-Rad the One writes, Sony is destroying Xbox by a huge margin. They have absolutely no reason to crossplay. Why should the number one selling console want their competition to have one of the best MMOs on the market, which is pretty much a console exclusive? And I totally understand where Be the Rad is coming from. The only problem is that actually there has been some updated news regarding this, is that Sony's stock price is falling. People are pissed. People are very upset. And now mainstream media is reporting on this issue as well with the falling stock price. I'd like to just submit, this clip from the news for you guys. So take a look and I'll be right back.
We've got some breaking news in the hugely profitable video gaming world. Sony stock is falling right now 1 1/3% after the parent of the PlayStation pretty much refusing at this hour to acknowledge it's got major cross-play problems with the hottest game on the planet right now, Fortnite. Fortnite, which is already available for Sony's PlayStation, has just been released for the Nintendo Switch, a competing console. But gamers got a rude awakening when they tried to open a Fortnite account for Switch and discovered they were locked out from doing so if they already had opened a Fortnite account on Sony's PlayStation. Sacre bleu! Horrible.
So that in and of itself is why they are going to want to enable crossplay, because it's, having a financial impact on their company. Sony and PlayStation in and of itself has been a really big profit center for the company as a whole. And they've done a fantastic job this generation. You cannot sit here and say you're selling 80 million plus consoles. They're definitely doing things right. However, at least it is from my perspective that crossplay now is right for the gamers and the developers. Honestly, I don't care about Sony or Microsoft or Nintendo in this case when it comes to if they didn't want this. Crossplay is good for the community. It's good for gamers. It's good developers. And I think developers should be left up with that, with that question. So the question in my mind then comes to is that, what do you have to lose if Sony enables gamers to play together? If the developer wants it and Sony doesn't, stand in the way like they're doing now, what do you lose? And I can't answer that question. As a PlayStation owner, somebody who's owned stock in the company, nothing. It's like if you're worried that people are going to leave your platform en masse, that personally makes me say well, why would they? Like if your platform is the leading platform, if it's doing what's right by gamers, you wouldn't have that fear. And I think, and we'll cover this in a couple other comments as well, in more detail. But I think at the end of the day, gamers, should the platform holders should be competing on services and what they offer to the community, not what they don't offer, what they prevent. And that's just my perspective, but I totally respect yours as well. So we have two comments from Tempest Bryson 71. Kind of a theme here. I want to group those together. So first he says, you self-entitled kids these days make me so sad. Crossplay really is not as important as whining children are making it out to be. You guys really need to take a step back and look at all the problems as gaming as a whole. There is so much more important stuff that needs to be addressed. He then goes on to say in another comment thread, work to game, you come off as really entitled, though I'm sure you're going to disagree. But is crossplay good for gaming because you think it is? Most people I know, and again, I'm sure you will disagree and say the exact opposite, does not want crossplay for various reasons. One of the biggest being bringing in serious toxicity even worse than we have now, due to players thinking that playing on their system makes them better in some way, shape, or form. We see that as enough as it is with PC players towards PS4 players. Imagine how worse it will get by potentially adding hundreds of thousands of players. It would be a nightmare. So, I mean, two kind of concepts here. The idea of being entitled, I can't disagree. I look at my life and I have been extremely blessed, right? I have all consoles. I can afford a gaming PC and I can afford, these things because, my wife supports me in these purchases because it's not me just buying things. We have to budget for these things, but they are a priority. I really enjoy gaming in all forms, right? So to think I'm entitled, absolutely. I'm not I'm the exception to the rule here. Like I'm platform agnostic. And I think that personally gives me, I guess, a good insight as to, I think, what's good when I look at this. I look at players who can't afford more than one system. And then I look at players who, want to play with their friends and, maybe, like two kids got together and then they couldn't, one got a PlayStation, one got an Xbox or something like that, or a Switch. And they're like, hey, let's play Fortnite or let's play Minecraft or let's play Rocket League. And it turns out somebody picked wrong, and so I don't think that's necessarily fair. I don't think for them it's entitled. I think for them it's important. I think it's important for, like I said, I think crossplay is a gamer centric movement. I think it's a developer centric focus. I think that's where it wins, and I don't think a system like Sony in this case being number one, it shouldn't matter. Like if there's the best system, then they're the best system, and that's where you want to play. So why worry about releasing crossplay in this case? So then talking about how toxicity. This is I want to bring up this because it's actually a legitimate argument. People can be toxic, and I know gaming companies have spent a lot of effort. You look at also various other movements. He talks about other issues within gaming. About inclusion, not being hateful towards anybody who is different than you are, whether it be race, religion, creed, gender, any of that. And that definitely is an issue. That toxicity is a problem. And you're right. It shouldn't, we should not, discount that. And crossplay does not discount it. However, I look at it as a form of momentum, a momentum being that, what you have going behind you right now. This is focused. It's like I said, and you saw the clip, it's affecting Sony's stock. This is going to make Sony make a decision. Now it might not come out in the way of crossplay, but it could lead to that, and that's my hope. So is it the most important, absolute critical issue? Depends on who you are. For some people who can't play together, for some people who are locked out of their PlayStation accounts, and we'll actually hear from a few here in a little bit. It's a huge issue. Like they did not know Sony could unlock those accounts. They could release them so that they could go play where they want. But I think that's actually more at a risk for Sony. I don't think that's the right move. I think you do that and people say buy PlayStation. And I don't think that's the right move either. And we're going to cover my thoughts on Sony, because we got a fun comment coming up. So that's I guess that's where I'm with you, Bryson, on the concept of there are other issues. I think toxicity is a bad thing, but I'm not also calling for the this being a requirement. I think it should be a developer choice. I think then players have the option to opt into it, just like they do right now with Fortnite. When you talk about crossplay, I have it. I'm playing on Xbox and Switch, and it's all great. It's a really it's a really great thing they're doing there. I would like to see Sony step up. And then, yes, we need to look at addressing those other issues. But momentum is behind this movement right now. And that allows us to get more done in a shorter period of time, as opposed to, I guess, spreading out all of our energy across all of these issues and then essentially then not having any kind of impact whatsoever. So I want to address 3 comments here. First, Rosa. So I heard Microsoft denied crossplay at first, like back in the day. Zoila, in the past, it was Microsoft. I don't think Sony can block Final Fantasy XIV from other platforms because the game doesn't exist on Sony's servers. As an aside, I absolutely do not want this game on Switch. The Switch is barely more powerful than a PS3. Let's not go back there. And then finally, Lorem Epsom writes, last we heard, it's Microsoft who had unacceptable conditions related to online play and the usage of Xbox Live, and Square Enix said, screw them. That being said, now that Sony's in the position of absolute dominance, It's not out of the realm of possibilities that they would try to renegotiate their contract with Square Enix to tighten up their grip over at Final Fantasy XIV in the console space. But since the PC is a more important platform, I don't think Square Enix would sign anything that Sony waved at them. In any case, though, Xbox wouldn't be excluded if they didn't play hardball back in the day, so shame on Microsoft. I'd love to have a Switch version, though. So there's a lot of themes here. First, absolutely, Microsoft did not play ball. Like, you look at how they launched the Xbox One, their sins and what they did is one of the reasons why they've really struggled, and this is one of the reasons why, competition is great. PlayStation was able to really take the ball with this, and this is great. Same thing kind of look in the 360 era. You saw PlayStation really make a lot of gaming and gamer-centric focused decisions. Microsoft's been doing the same thing this generation with Phil Spencer in lead now, taking over during this console generation. You're seeing a lot of gamer-centric things. And so he actually recently gave an interview kind of talking about this and the question of crossplay, and if he was in first place, would he still support it? And this is what he had to say.
If the roles were flipped, and
I get that one a lot. If I was winning,
the install
the horns would come out.
Well, I don't necessarily get the impression that would be you, but I certainly see a previous incarnation of Microsoft being way more like, no, forget it. They can't. They can't play on Xbox.
When
Live.
I'm sitting there saying, I don't like timed skins and timed strikes and all these things, and people instantly show me the hey, 360 COD, we were right in the middle of that, and I can only be who I am, and I can only be who I am at the time I am, and PlayStation sold more PlayStations than we've sold Xboxes, and I can't argue that if a what if scenario. I can say for whatever it means that in my heart, I don't like exclusive content deals like that. I would support crossplay in the other scenario. Everybody can call BS on it. I can't really fight that.
Yeah, but also I think that just at some point that just makes sense. That's you can understand they're running a business and all that other stuff. But when you say you'd want crossplay, of course.
Our goal is to be relevant and important to every gamer on the planet. And if people want to go buy somebody else's console and we'll play games there, great. As long as we're all kind of leaning into how do we make this business all up for everybody as vibrant as possible.
And so with Phil Spencer, I totally respect where he's coming from. I respect him as a leader. But by no means should Microsoft be given a pass. There is no, if Microsoft was pushing for this, I'd be pushing against them. I could care less, like I've said earlier, about Microsoft, Nintendo, or Sony. Unless you go and stock in them and there is a financial impact to you and your portfolio, then it really doesn't matter. Then you're just kind of picking teams for the sake of picking teams. If Microsoft if they have bad policies, then we should fight against those. And I fought against those. And you might not aware, I was not on YouTube at the time, but on the forums, on various polls, on anything. I was constantly voicing my feedback at feedback.xbox.com as well, saying this is not a good practice, that they need to fix this, etc. And it's, yes, again, I own a PlayStation, I own an Xbox, I own a Switch. I don't care. It's not about that. But it's another thing to say, hey, you did something in the past and now we're doing it. It's still, crossplay is not, crossplay itself is good for gamers. It doesn't mean anything to the platform holders, and now it's actually starting to turn against them, like we saw with Sony and their falling stock and the interest there. So yeah, shame on Microsoft. This is the reason probably Sony's doing what it's doing was that. But I liked Phil Spencer's honest insight onto this. I think it's really important to see that, and I think gamers respect humility. So I look at what Sony's doing now with blocking crossplay as your PS3 $600 announcement. It's tone deaf. It's not just tone deaf, but it's anti-consumer, it's anti-community. They're the number one leading console. What do they have to lose? They don't have anything to lose. People aren't going to leave en masse. They're not going to abandon PlayStation because all of a sudden they could potentially play on a Switch as well. In fact, I would venture to bet it's probably going to increase engagement. It's going to increase the life of these games that people are playing, and maybe even the spending, within those games. Sometimes it's, people are like, no, this is definitely bad. yeah, at the end of the day, like, they were saying like Game Pass might be bad, but Phil Spencer says that it actually increases spending and purchasing of games. Like, he does that in the same interview I quoted. Not going to show the clip here, but again, links in the description below to these to the full interviews that are referenced. So go check them out. I'd love to know your thoughts, but I'm with you. This is Microsoft's issue. But then the concept of Switch, I am with you, Zoila. Like, we left PlayStation and it feels like it could be a step back unless they do something different, obviously, with the performance and the art style. Because like you see, like, hey, imagine if it's a lot of work. That could actually impact development, time if they had to do some whole different structure of the system. I don't know how big it would be on Switch. Personally, I wouldn't mind a version in which that it doesn't need to be the full game, but maybe I can interact with players, much like with the companion app. But there's other things that I'd like on Switch as well. Not saying it because I know there are players like, like Lorem Epsom who would like to see it on the Switch in and of itself. But the Switch version is a little bit more controversial due to the technical nature of the platform itself. But at the end of the day, if it was good and Square Enix thought it was good to bring it and there was a benefit to the game and to the player base as a whole, then I'm not going to stand in the way. I'm just not calling for a Switch version. So then Proof M writes, having crossplay across all consoles IMO would be a bad idea at lulz. Imagine playing COD, Battlefield, Overwatch, or any online shooter against PC players. Console players are going to be at a huge disadvantage, and the same goes for Fortnite. So on this topic, I'd like to say, like, I have played on PC with a controller and have taken, keyboard and mouse players to task. It's about personal preference at that point. Obviously, hardware, like if you have somebody who's running 200 frames a second, and then you're sitting here at, console, maybe 60, 30 to 60, depending on the game. I know Destiny 2 is in the 30s on console, but, the Battlefield, the other games, COD, is at 60 frames a second. Yeah, there's definitely, hardware advantage, when you have more frames per second in that case. But again, shouldn't that be up to the player, like, to opt into this? I'm not saying that all these games have to support it, and no matter what, when you queue in Overwatch, you're queuing up against PC players, etc. No, I think that if you're playing Overwatch and you want to play with PC players, then you get the option to do so. It's a move that empowers you, the player, to choose to do that. And outside of PC players, like, imagine it again, Overwatch, PlayStation, Switch, it's not coming to Switch yet that we know of, and Xbox. Those are, pretty much even keel. And if you're sitting here playing, then why not be able to play? Like, like in the case where friends come together and meet at school, and it turns out one has one console and the other has another, and not being able to play. This does not mean that I'm calling for all games to be on all platforms. Personally, I wouldn't mind to see Halo and like Gears of War and all those like on a PlayStation. I think that would be really great for those games. I have personally no preference on that. I think an exclusive, though, is a whole different thing because it's developed in-house, first party, to highlight, obviously the system itself. So I doubt we'll ever see that kind of shift as far as it goes. But no, I'm not saying that it has to be for all games and in all situations and on by default. I'm saying that we should definitely empower people to make that choice for themselves as opposed to the platform holder being the gatekeeper. So Rosetta Thomas writes, why is this guy keep attacking Sony for some reason? And then Raza757 follows up, worked a game. Why are you pressing Sony? Everyone doesn't want crossplay. # you hate Sony. You don't protest on exclusives. That should be a concern before crossplay. You aren't starting a protest. You're just giving fanboys ammo against each other. Crossplay is cool, but it's not a must-have for those who play crossplay games. And so for Rosetta, like, no, I don't hate Sony. I am calling them to task. I think everybody should. I would, I've called Microsoft to task. I've called Nintendo to task. When I see either an injustice or something that I don't agree with, I'm going to call them out on it. I don't have any, loyalty to one platform or another, and I don't think anybody should. Like, I know people have had really great experiences on, let's say PlayStation. And I know a lot of people feel that because I'm saying that they need to support crossplay, and then, as an option, you can either like boycott or you can use #crossplay now to really kind of raise awareness about this issue. And that in and of itself, I think, is perfectly fine. Those are legitimate arguments. Impacting somebody's bottom line is a way to get what you want. And I've said that this actually has to be a Sony-centric movement because I don't hate Sony. I think one of the best things about the industry is that, Sony and Microsoft vying for each other. And that in and of itself means gamers win at the end of the day. And so when gamers win, we're gamers. It doesn't matter, you know. And so if Sony's not doing something that is good for the community, there is competition. There's an option for people to go to. If Microsoft's doing something squirrely or shady that's not good for the gaming community or developers, there's a platform that's going to hold them accountable. And we've seen this time and time again. So Microsoft, like off the 360 era, didn't do anything right for gamers. They weren't listening to their community. They were tone deaf, and they paid the price for it. They paid the price so much that they've been playing catch up this whole generation. Now, this whole generation has been they've been making really good moves. Again, I really applaud Phil Spencer for his leadership and the team over at Microsoft there. Sony listened to gamers coming off the PS3 era, and PS3 and PS4 ultimately benefited and became a really great system to play on this generation, due largely in part to the success of the Xbox 360. You go look at Xbox Live and how it changed the game and how it really upped the level of services, and then you go look at PS4 and say it's definitely better when you look at that compared to PS3 and how that was structured as well. So no, I absolutely don't hate Sony, but I'm not going to sit here and let anybody, say that I can't voice my opinion, and if they're wrong, which crossplay, again, like I've said, is good for gamers. You might not specifically want it, and I completely respect people's opinion who don't want it. I would always like to know. I always like to follow up with why. Why don't you want it? And then, and then does it hurt you if they add it? And no one has yet answered that it's going to hurt them personally if for some reason Sony allowed crossplay with Fortnite, with Switch and with Xbox. So, I'd like to know, if you think that crossplay, adding it to these, multiplayer games that are multi-platform hurts you in some way, let me know. Now, we kind of talked about the toxicity thing. And that we need to definitely work to, focus in on that. But again, at the end of the day, I don't personally think I'm hating on Sony. I've had a couple of conversations with some people in the community who also felt the same way. But again, I want PlayStation 5 to be a success. And if they don't do what's right for gamers, you're going to see the same tectonic shift in the next generation. So Anthony Baxter writes, Sony, as we know, is heavily against cross-platforming with Xbox. However, if they finally agree to cross-platform play with all publishers, could you imagine how large the community would grow? With the recent talk of how large Final Fantasy XIV already is, Xbox being a part would definitely boost that even further. And I completely agree. I think any kind of offset of the extra development cost to make sure that they're pushing it to a new platform, adding in a couple of 100,000 at a minimum new players and new potential players and millions of new potential players who can't currently play the game would be great for the game itself. It would continue to extend the life. That's one of the things that, I look at Guild Wars 2, I look at WoW, I'm like, man, if they would bring in controller support native and then be able to, add into these consoles, as that player base grows, those are really great ways, I think, to support the game in the long run. But that's just my personal opinion. I have a PlayStation. That's where we play. My wife plays, Final Fantasy 14, and I play on PC, and it's fantastic. And I have a lot of friends who don't have those two options due to many financial reasons. And it'd be great if they were able to pick up and play on their Xboxes. And that's really what it's about. I think the community would benefit as a whole. I think when people are playing, 14, there is definitely some bias. Some PC players probably don't like playing with PS4 players, depending on really what you're doing. But the game in and of itself, the community as itself, I think is very open and receptive to really playing with anybody. So then we got two comments regarding, obviously, the controversy with Fortnite. Dimitri writes, I freaking have so much stuff on my PS4 account. Skull Trooper, Ghoul Trooper, and the Reaper, Omega, and so much more. And I originally started on PC and then linked to PS4. And now I can't play on my Switch. Wow, Sony. Really throwing us under the bus here. And then Sean writes, after this generation, I'm thinking I'm done with Sony. I've already spent too much money on my PS4 to do anything like boycott them this generation. But between how stubborn they were for mods in games like Skyrim and Fallout 4 and how much they seem to be against crossplay on other consoles just because of the money, I feel like they really care more about their profits and shareholders than their consumers. Throw in that I really don't care about their first party and I might be done. Sony's first party is absolutely incredible. For me, it's not something that speaks to me as an individual, but you can't deny the just unbridled success and the dedication that Sony has taken the time to give these studios the ability to build out these games. It's really quite both impressive and it's great for games. They've raised the bar. I know a lot of people who have gone in and played these games and they're just they're thrilled. People have had these great experiences. I don't want that to stop by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's bad for gamers if Sony were to fall. and there would be at least nothing to take their place. I think, when we look at it at the end of the day, though, this is a lot. Like these 2 comments, I'm going to tell you guys right now, are 2 of hundreds of comments that we've received regarding this throughout, especially any kind of video trying to help people link their accounts with Epic. And yeah, a lot of people calling done for Sony, boycotting Sony. Boycotting essentially is that short-term effort to literally, hey, we're going to impact your bottom line. So you wake up, you pay attention. Because money, speaks louder. We all vote with our dollars. But there are a lot of people like Dimitri who have spent money and they've linked. Like I even know people who are like, oh, I went ahead and just linked it to PS4. They were PC players. And, and I just did that. And then all of a sudden it turns out now I can't play on my Switch. And now I was going to play it on Switch, but now I have to make a new account. There's also others who have been saying like, no, just make a new account. It's not a big deal. And, I think it is a big deal, especially when you talk about people who spend a lot of time and money invested in these accounts. And one of 2 things, like we've talked about earlier in the video, Sony should either just release them, let people go and unlink from PlayStation and go play on another platform. But I think that's bad for Sony. I think that's bad for PlayStation. I think that's bad for PlayStation fans because you want to retain those. You want to do what's right for the community. And so, with all due respect for people who don't think this is a big issue, I've seen, the difference. I've seen people who it is a big issue. And the fact that, again, Sony's stock is falling shows that people are looking at this. PlayStation is a big piece of Sony. They've done really good this generation. And I want them to continue. I don't want them to get back to where they were from the PS2 to PS3 era. I want them to stay where they were when they launched the PS4, really thinking about gamers and what's best for gamers. And that's what you should, in my opinion, want in your platform. If you only have one platform, if you're going to pick a side, you should want people to want to care about you. You don't want to be a statistic. You want to, have an impact. And if it's a sense of pride, that your system is number one, that's great. Because I want to tell you right now, my system's number one. My PlayStation is right there in the other room. And I want them to listen to me. And again, like I've said, like if PlayStation owners don't want crossplay, that's fine. And then, we're not going to see Sony do that, but I'm seeing lots of PlayStation owners want it. And it's again, like it's a divisive issue. And so there's so many more comments, guys. This could be a video that just runs for days. Based off of all the comments. I think one of the arguments I did see, and I'm going to throw it up here real quick, Raven, Kaido, really a huge piece talking about Black Desert Online and Terra. Both are actually on PS4. Black Desert is coming to PlayStation 4. I think it should come with crossplay. Absolutely. I don't care for these like exclusive third-party deals. I don't like them. I don't think they're good for gamers. And I'm really wanting, again, hopefully this comes across that I'm making the case that what's good for gamers, and I can respect that if you don't believe me. Some people say I'm doing this for views. Well, I do like you guys hanging out on the channel, but I don't see how crossplay is a content creator movement because these games are multi-platform. If I play on Fortnite on PS4 versus Xbox, I can still make a video. I can still make a guide. It doesn't matter. It would. I just think that when it comes to 14, when it comes to like crossplay games, I mean, when we talk about the future, I think Destiny 2 would be a huge beneficiary of crossplay. I think Division 2 would as well. I think Anthem would as well. I think these games would be huge, especially from a PvE component. Like I definitely understand people's argument against PvP because of the competitive factor, but in a PvE, why does it matter? It shouldn't. We're all working together. If you have higher frame rate, awesome. That might help us accomplish our goal. Guys, this is a ton of comments. Again, this is just a small fraction of that. There's several, out there that I did want to highlight, but because of time, we have cut. But I know a lot of people, and maybe we'll have to do another video. Let me know in the comments below if you'd like to see me address more comments. My phone's telling me it's time to get ready to roll. So let me know in the comments below. Should we do another video? What are your thoughts on this and any of the comments that we've had here today? Obviously, if you were someone who's commented and you didn't see your name featured in this, yeah. Again, like, oh my gosh, like just curating the list for these comments was long, and hopefully, you know, and let me know if I didn't do a good job with it, but hopefully what you've seen that, you know, I'm not sitting here and picking ones that just agree with me. No, like, we're not a community that you have to agree. We're a community that we pride respect in our conversation. So there have been a couple of people who violated our comment policy, which is in the link of every video. You'll see a little comment policy link to the kind of a video talking about what is and is not acceptable in terms of debate, because we don't want to shy. We don't want to be an echo chamber. I know it's very easy. I know the internet loves to make echo chambers. You know, and so it's really important that we highlight everybody's thoughts and respect everybody's opinion. And hopefully I did that. But let me know, like, if this is one-sided regarding the comment selection. Like, just, yeah, give me some feedback on this. I haven't been able to sit down and do one of these videos in a while. I want to make sure I really focus in on this. We have some more community feedbacks that we're preparing to do here in the future. But anyway, this has been a long video, and I do think you've hung out up to this point. Let me know, like I said, in the comments below. But for Work to Game, my name is Brian. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Take care. Hey, what's going on? This is the end screens. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please hit one of these whatevers around the screen for some even more fun. Who knows what's going to happen? I don't know. I don't know what Google's thinking.